G'day and welcome back to Billionaire Study Notes. My name's Glenn Gillen. Today we're going to talk about Steve Jobs, the CEO of Apple, the co-founder of Apple also, who has actually just stepped down as of about a week ago from the CEO position. Now what we're going to look at is how has he been able to be so influential in such a fast changing industry? How has he been able to stay at the top? Even be kicked out of the company, start a separate company, come back, shake things up again, and get Apple from a failing company back up to a thriving company, and become currently sitting at number 2 as the second biggest company in the world, though has fluttered around and overtaken ExxonMobil once or twice and become the biggest company in the world. So we're not going to look at so much his strategies or the actual things he's done, more so on his values and how he perceives himself in the market, what he believes about himself, his values and his focus, and what has allowed him to achieve such extreme highs of success, and perhaps what the everyday man and woman can also look at mimicking or mirroring and achieve similar results. Now the first thing I'd like to talk about is product focus. He's always had a clear-cut focusing on the product. A product that must be classy, it must be elegant, it must be decorative, it must be easy to use, attractive. It must be the black Porsche of computers. It must be as cool as a stereo and put on display, much as a stereo is put on display. Further to this, he's been termed visionary in that he can change an industry. He can guide his people, influence his people, motivate his people to determine what a consumer wants, often before a consumer even knows they want it or need it. The main example of this would be when he brought none other than John Sculley across to Apple Computer at the time to be the CEO. Now, John Sculley at the time was working for Pepsi, one of the biggest, a huge multinational conglomerate in the soft drink market. Now, he brought him across, and the main quote that I just absolutely love when he brought him across was, "Do you want to keep selling sugared water for the rest of your life? Or come with me and change the world?" Now that just shows that he's such a visionary. He knows, he had so much self-belief that he was going to shake things up, that he was going to just rule not only the industry but make a huge impact on the rest of the world and the consumer's life. This goes too with his continuous vision of making the black Porsche of computers, a computer that was more like a stereo that people would put out on display, much like they put a stereo, not just being a beige ugly box that would just be relegated to a study and kept out of sight. This also ties in with him having a clear image of all the products that came out under his company's name, what branding they had to have associated with them. For example, they had to be cool, classy, rich. Wealthy people had to use them. They had to be easy to use. Had to just be simple, just work. They had to be so clear and simple. Now, by having such quality, it creates raving fans. Now, raving fans will do your marketing for you by word of mouth. They will promote your product to their friends, their family, and in turn you'll get more sales. Now, Apple has been amazing at being able to achieve this. One of the ways it's been able to do this is by product placement in blockbuster movies. I ask you to have a look next time you're watching a movie, when there is a wealthy person, an attractive person, a somewhat enviable, sexually appealing person in a movie, they will most often be using a Mac. Whereas on the contrary, when you have a poor, lower class, struggling person who's not attractive or even a bad guy, they will never be using a Mac. Now this is just the branding that Apple has been so successful at. Steve Jobs is the ultimate salesman. No matter what he does, he's always trying to sell. For example, when the iPhone was being developed, he signed a contract with AT&T to be the sole producer or sole retailer of the Apple iPhone. Now, as was the common theme at the time and still is today, that the telecommunications provider would put their logo on the cell phone or product being sold. Now you look at most phones, you'll see the little logo there of whoever the company may be. Now AT&T was a huge 900-pound gorilla in the telecommunications market, and Apple had made a few computers, made the iPod, but had never even stepped foot anywhere near the telecommunications market. And here's Steve Jobs throwing orders around about there's not going to be that logo on the iPhone. It's going to have one logo and one logo only, and that's the Apple symbol on the back. Now this shook things right up. In that meeting they had with the AT&T executives, this shook the roof off. This just absolutely threw the biggest spanner in the works. Now, he stuck to his guns, and he's the ultimate salesman, and he was able to get that through, and lo and behold, history tells the story that you look at the iPhone now, you won't see any telecommunications provider's logo on the actual phone. Now, what we always find with billionaires and the peak successful people in life, if you do enough study, is that focus. They always have an intense focus. Focus is always a driving motivator. Their focus is clear cut. There's no disturbing it. People, outside influences will try and take them off their focus, but they will stay on track. Now, this is made him be perceived as often very blunt, stubborn, it's my way or the highway type of thinking and acting. Now, an example of this is on the iPhone. Once again, we just use that for an example. When that was coming out, he said, now we want this phone to be better than all other phones on the market. We want it to have an iPod built in, camera, video camera, do email, surf the internet, fit a whole computer screen page into one little screen and be able to move around it quite easily. And the final kicker to his engineering team was that it is to have one control button. Now, let's just put ourselves in the engineering team's position right now. There were so many phones on the market that now he wanted it to have a QWERTY keyboard to make it simple, not to have to press, say, the button 2-3 times to get the letter C. Now, his engineers said, how are we going to fit all these things in that you want it to do with only having one button? You've got to be joking. He stuck to his guns, he stayed true, he stayed to his focus that this was going to shake up the industry, this was going to be an absolute amazing phone that people were going to love. It was to have one button. Lo and behold, 150 of the engineers at Apple, one by one, went up to management, and they were trying to persuade management to talk some sense into Steve Jobs. Look, he's lost his mind, we can't do this phone with just one button. Lo and behold, the touchscreen came out, they were able to do it with just one button. Now, the last thing I'd talk about is his life. He's got a great focus on life, he's got a great belief about his life. One of the quotes he said in his Stanford commencement speech was that it's only when you look back on life that you can connect the dots. Now, the example he uses for this is that when he was in college, he dropped out of the course he was doing and still attended college and just went to classes for free. Now, one of the classes he went to was a calligraphy course, and at the time it showed no, he only did it for fun, and people were telling him he's lost his mind, you're wasting your time by going to these courses. Though down the track, when he was creating the first Apple computer and using colour typeface and coloured screen and imagery, he used what he learned in that calligraphy course to make the typeface on that computer, which just shows when you look back on life, you can connect the dots. Hope you've enjoyed the podcast. My name's Glenn Gillen. This is Billionaire Study Notes.